everyone, good evening. Welcome to our live session for today. And today it's all about the role of women in Kazakhstan. So really happy to have Nastia and Mulder with us today. And maybe a short introduction, both of you are from Kazakhstan, but when did you come to Hong Kong? Maybe a short intro as to why this topic means a lot to you. Yes.
Yeah, sure. We actually arrived to Hong Kong in the same year, 2018. Mm-hmm. And we were from the same city and like neighboring schools.
Oh, which schools are you guys from?
Nazarbayev Intellectual Schools.
Yeah, NAS.
NAS. So I attended the physics and mathematics, and Nastia attended IB.
Yeah.
International.
And we knew each other before coming here, but we never really did something like this together. Yeah, so it's really fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
So you guys actually knew each other in Kazakhstan before coming here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. Okay.
So I studied PolyU, I studied biology, but I was also interested in feminism since I was in high school, and I was running a feminist club with my friends back in my high school, and very passionate about women in Kazakhstan and women empowerment in general.
Okay, so we're really gonna discuss more on that later as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes, cool. How about you?
Yes, thank you very much. Me as well. I came here in Hong Kong in 2018, and I'm currently a final year student at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, majoring in biomedical engineering. And feminism was also always a very important and relevant topic for me. It's just my personal interest. It's something important for our country and for the whole world. So yeah, I'm interested in learning and hearing what we have to say today and sharing as well about our culture.
Amazing. So for today, it's not just talking about your opinions, right? But it's really about how we tap into how it changes over time from the very beginning, and how the role of women actually evolved up till modern times.
Yeah.
And I think one interesting thing we talked about offline just now is when we're younger we hear a lot of fairy tales. I mean, for me, it's more like Disneyland, Disney fairy tales, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty, etc. But I think one thing that really made me realize as I get older is why is the role of women in these fairy tales so, I don't know, it's so basic. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it's always about them waiting for someone to rescue them, or waiting for someone to save them from the evil person. So I don't know, as you get older you tend to think why is it always so cliche? So I'm not sure, is it something that you see in your culture, the stories you hear growing up?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I could 100% relate to that, and I think all of us can. So I grew up with my grandmother, so I think that's a very lucky thing that happened to me. So I was always near her, and she would always tell me the fairy tales, right? The traditional ones. And it's interesting how every fairy tale just starts with a very rich man who has a lot of landings, and he has a beautiful daughter. She's smart, of course she's very smart, but most importantly she's very beautiful. And then the story, it's just the beginning, but it always goes into, okay, and now she needs to get married. And everything begins when she has to get married, she has to get a family, and there was no other development for a woman. Sometimes we could have a very tragic legends as well, where women usually died because they couldn't be with someone they love, or they were the victims of an arranged marriage, or they couldn't just go and do what they wanted to do. So it's a lot of fairy tales and legends and stories. They are based around women being a center of the family, women just getting married. So that's something that was the first perception of women when we were growing up. Maybe we were subconsciously we didn't really understand, but that's something that was ingrained when we were children. So yeah, that's the very first impression. And I think it still is a founding base for many people who have the mindset of what's the role of women in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, is it the same kind of fairy tales you listen growing up?
I wasn't, because I'm not ethnically Kazakh, so I wasn't listening to these fairy tales, but they're always part of the curriculum. When you learn Kazakh language and literature, it's always the curriculum where you read these fairy tales. And I think in addition to that, but you also kind of mentioned that women in this in these fairy tales are often portrayed as a tragic victim. Like a tragic victim, like a mother, maybe she lost a son, or something tragic happened to her, and it's never their fault. It's always the fault of some bad men around them, but just the fact that the woman is placed in a position of a tragic victim is kind of sad.
Yeah, it's very common in Kazakh literature as well.
It's like a common trope.
Like it's always the same, story being told, and like when you're learning Kazakh language, right? Do you have like a specific story that is like the most, like commonly heard ones?
Most important and most like common ones are like Kız Jibek or Shuhan'ın Bilgisi, which are like just like they are names of different women, and we have like just Ulpan, for example, is also like a book that are written about the tragic destinies of women, what they had to like go through, what they had to that they didn't have a choice in their lives, and many consequences that came after that for them. For example, them leaving their house, them leaving their family, them marrying to a guy they didn't want to marry, them dying because of they couldn't be with someone they love. So it's a lot of different stories, but always with some tragic end.
Like but tragic, like, so the story is not just about them getting married to some like handsome prince, but it's like something bad always happens.
Not always, but like if you look at fairy tales, it's they try to make it like happy end, right? They want to make a happy ending. It's a woman that finds a very nice man, and then he's smart and he's beautiful and handsome and everything, and they live happily ever after. But if you go into the Kazakh literature deeper, there's a lot of tragic stories there.
And that's like kind of shapes the way you think, when you grow up, like listening to all this, right?
Yeah, it also shows what women had to go through in like many years ago at that time. So.
And like the reason why people could relate to that literature is because it was actually real. Because they probably knew this women, like similar stories. Because like a life of a woman was very tragic back then.
Yeah.
That's why this is like a trope in literature, because people could relate to it.
Oh, and like is it like so commonly taught in school even? Like these kind of like stories?
Yeah, because like classic literature, it's
like
always in the curriculum.
Kazakh classics, so we have to go through it.
And I think we have some photos as well.
Yeah, then the next ones.
Yeah. So like over time when you actually listen to these stories, like is there any like actual historic events, that actually like go against all the fairy tales you actually listen to?
Yes. I would say that although there was a lot of oppression and we could hear all these stories and they're very stereotypical, at the same time Kazakhs and like our country's ancestors were nomads, so we have this nomadic spirit, and women were also warriors, they were also rulers, and they were actually very much involved in all political affairs, and they had like a voice and a vote, a right to vote there, because men would usually advise and they would discuss it with women, because they were very central to the family, to the community. Like we used to live in like communities, like villages or something, where people would move together, so different like important decisions, they would rely both on men and women. So it's not like women were all like they were oppressed, but at the same time we had this empowerment of women. And there are different historical examples of women who were particularly famous as rulers. So there is the Tomiris, we call her Tamiris. She's one of the very famous women rulers. There was a film made I think a year ago. So it depicts a very powerful and strong woman, and that is one of the like roles women had in those days too.
So in a way that it's been a long time since actually there's women in power and like politics and like actually running the country. So it's not something that only happened recently.
Yeah, I feel like because it's probably because Kazakhs were nomadic, and I think it's like a core of their mentality. It's just like a freedom of a person, both men and women. The roles were divided in a more traditional way. But I think even in the family, women were always like the last call were hers. Like a woman would like make the decision in the family. Like if you need to like move your family off, or like who decides like who marries whom, often it will be like a mother in the family.
Oh, that's really okay. That's different in the sense that in Asia a lot of times it's when we grow up, we always listen that we should be the one to always listen. We're not the ones making the final call. But it seems that from history, from stories, it seems that women in Kazakhstan has always been, you know, the one that your voice is actually heard, and you like, do you agree, like it's always been that case? Or
maybe for older women, but I think younger women were also like very obedient.
Yes, they were, and then until they get into the family and they build the status around them. I think because after you have a lot of kids and you like bring them up, you have the status, and the status of a mother and also a grandmother. They have a very high priority, so it's like it's a lot of respect and a lot of like listening to them. So it's
so it's like they respect the roles of like mothers. Like it's not just like, okay, you're your mom, your only focus should be like on your kids, but they respect your voice on like decisions.
It's like basically when you're older and wiser and you have many kids, you looked at as like a decision maker in the family, basically. But when you're a young woman who's not married yet, you have to be obedient, you have to obey to your older parents, to men. And in general, you have to be like, I think, shy and more like reserved.
Yeah, like very modest before you marry. Like, for example, in the early Kazakh Khanate time, which is like, it's a form of rulement. Like, it's a Kazakh kingdom, we can say. As we said, the status of a woman as a mother and as a grandmother, for example, was very high. But if you're a young girl, then anything can be decided upon you. There can be an arranged marriage, or you can become a second or a third or a fourth and so on wife, or you can be sent away very far away, or you can marry a guy who's like 85 years old or something. It's like there is a song about a girl that is very famous in our country, and it's called Balkadisha, and one of the lyrics literally says like, oh, you're so beautiful and everything, but you just walked away with a man who is like 85 years old. So it's also one of the tragic destinies for young girls. Like, it depends. When you're young, it's not many things are in your power.
It's not common now, right?
Yes, no, it's not common.
Different times.
Some exceptions. There's still families in some regions, I believe, who still think that having like more than one wife is appropriate or something, but it's of course it's illegal. But there are people who still think that it's like a traditional thing. It's okay to have two wives. So but it emerged from there.
But at least it's not legal. It's not legal.
Yeah, it's not.
Oh, that they actually put that in the song. Like the
it's a beautiful song. It's a song about how beautiful the girl is, and it's a very sad one. It's about love, and in the end, the guy who's singing it, he's in love with this girl, and then he said, "But you were like you arranged marriage with that old man, and now I cannot do anything against it." Because in Kazakh culture, I think back then it was very bad to go against traditions. Like no one could. If you do, you die. That's the Kazakh
or you just run away.
Yeah, or you just run away.
Run away together.
You run away together, or you die together. That's all Kazakh literature about people like going against traditions.
Because marriage is a big part of the culture. As well. I think that's why, right? But I know like one of the main like biggest events that actually shaped your history was back in the Soviet Union era, right? Like, do you think that there are events in particular that happened that really, changed the way the society runs?
Yes. So after joining the Soviet Union in the beginning of the 20th century, that was a completely different era for women, I would say, because it's the rise of feminism in our country, and it's the first time women were given the equal rights with men, the right to work, the right to like vote and do everything. So it was a very sudden change. It wasn't like there were some things and events, but overall on a large scale, I would say it was a sudden change, right, for many women who were living in Kazakhstan in that moment. And you could see like during the Soviet Union there were different postures that were like, okay, women now have to study, you can get your education, you can get your degree, go and work, if you want, you do it. So it's something like gives more freedom to women and empowers them to work, to be a very important part of the society, to be the worker, to be the employer, to be the teacher, whoever she wants to be. But at the same time, because it was very fresh, right, the feminism was just rising, the standards, the social stereotypes about the role of women in a family were very strong, that she has to be the mother, and that's like very like a high priority. She has to think about her kids, her family, she has to be married even if she studies. So these were like the social responsibilities a woman like was bearing at that time.
And I feel like it's also, I think it's important to know to mention that it wasn't just coming from like Communist Party. Like women in Kazakhstan who were like very smart and literate, they saw this propaganda and they kind of took advantage of that, and they were actually like very proactive in this whole process of like liberalization of women, or like empowerment of women in Kazakhstan. They will like promote literacy, they will make female unions, and basically taking advantage of the situation that Soviet Union was in. So it wasn't just like Soviet people just like came and like gave freedom to Kazakh women. It was also coming from Kazakh women who saw that this is how the world's gonna be like.
Like it's like they took the first step, the actions to actually, you know, shape it. It's not just like
there were even like female newspapers that were like for women, and there were like some articles that were like empowering women of Kazakhstan, and they were like written by Kazakh women.
What's the general, like, how did the general public perceive it, you know, when there's a rise in feminism? Because like to be honest, a lot of societies might not take it like as well, but back then in Kazakhstan, like how did people perceive it in general?
I would say the general response was it's difficult to say if it was positive or negative. It's just something that people, like, it happened and people were trying to live with that, and we could see that in some regions it was very progressive. We can see that women were more involved, like for example in work or whatever, but in some regions, for example, it might be truth that in southern regions of Kazakhstan where there's a lot of like traditions still hold a very like high importance, we can see that it wasn't maybe very smooth and like it wasn't very fast transition until the end of the 20th century. Still there was a lot of like stereotypes, and women were not at best they could, like for example, graduate from high school, and not everyone would go to the university. But yeah, and I would say it depends on the time, it depends on the region.
But Soviet propaganda was very effective.
It was.
Yeah, because it's Soviet propaganda.
But like, is there any like particular events that happened that really push it forward in the society when it comes to feminism?
I think in general, the fact that women were joining the workforce and there were more heroes, like female heroes, because it was socialism, right? So there was this thing where you could become a like hero of socialist labor, something like that. Like whatever you do, like you work in a factory, or like you are a farmer and you like grow crops. If you like do the biggest amount of like this crop, and like you can become a hero, something like that, and they can actually give you like a medal, like a golden medal, like of acknowledgement. So there were like more women like that, and they will like usually write about these people like in newspapers, so like it will be like nation's pride, and there were more women like that. So I think that also influenced the image of a woman as as capable as a man. And I think that was like a big influence.
So it's not like, you know, all the fairy tales you listen as a kid, but it's like people are actually, you know, becoming equals. They're not just, you know, waiting to get married or something, right?
But at the same time, people still had to get married. Because it was supposed to. It's a fun fact. Like there is this International Day of Women that was created to celebrate women's rights and women's liberation. But like in Soviet Union, it was actually changed into kind of like Women's Day of Femininity, and that we need to prize women and how beautiful they are and how feminine they are.
It's like the like the energy surrounding the celebration was different, because before it was something like, okay, this is the empowerment of women, you got your rights, we have to fight for this, and this is this and this, right? It was like a political importance as well. But nowadays as well, and like it changed during the Soviet Union, because women started like working more and the birth rate decreased, so they were like, okay, we need to do something with that. And the fact, like they started praising like, oh, how beautiful women are, they're so like, you know, gentle, you have to give them flowers and everything. So now this celebration is more about, oh, you're beautiful, you know, pink flowers and everything. So,
and like what people wish you as a girl, they're like, I wish you to find like your like female happiness. In Russian it's like female happiness.
Well, how do you say it in Russian?
Like женское счастье.
That's like the female happiness. It can be anything in that, but I think the most general definition is like finding a good husband and building a good family. So that's something people would wish for the March, like the 8th.
And
of March.
originally, that wasn't the intent of the day.
So
that
it
wasn't the
actually
intention.
changed.
Yeah,
I mean,
I feel like
yeah.
Soviet Union tried to appeal to the female nature
Yes.
to keep women still like women.
Yeah.
And so they still have the thought that, okay, I need to get married at one point in my life.
Like you have to give birth, like
Yeah.
you have to have children.
So the whole meaning changed. How about now? Is it still like...
Yeah, and since
Oh.
then, this is this kind of celebration of
Yeah.
So the
femininity.
mindset is still there. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
Oh.
recently it's been changing again because I think there's an
Yeah.
effect of social media.
Yeah.
We've been talking about it.
Yeah, we can actually touch on that a bit later. I think.
Yeah, I think like later we're gonna touch on definitely more about that, like
Yeah.
how it actually changed. Because that's actually quite surprising. So it
Yeah.
actually was like quote unquote progressive in the beginning, and it kind of
Yeah.
like changed the entire meaning, and now you're slowly going
Yeah.
back to like how
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
right?
Because
Oh.
during the Soviet Union, although women had all those rights, they still were like there was no such thing as father does something at home. Like there was not such thing as father can cook or fathers can bring up children. So there was an interesting article in the New York Times back then about the Soviet woman, and I would call it the Soviet woman phenomenon because she has to work like 13 hours per day, and that includes her like office work or factory work, whatever she has
Yeah.
to do, and then she comes back and then she has to cook for her family and then do like homework with children and everything. So that house work was all the woman's responsibility. So that was how it was back then in the majority of cases. And like
Yes.
I can relate to that. And like my grandmother was like that. That's how she was brought up as well. She knew that everything at home is her responsibility, but she as well had to work. So it's it's yeah.
So it's like you
that.
have your daytime job, you go home, and you still have to fulfill your you know
Yeah.
responsibilities.
Yeah. And you also
That's
have to stay
crazy.
pretty.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
not easy,
and
guys.
graceful.
that's not as easy as it sounds, especially when you have to work like let's say 8 a.m. to like
Yeah, that's why
6
people
p.m.
always argue whether Soviet Union really caused female liberation, because it seems like they just doubled the work for women.
It's like you double the workload, but
Yeah.
you still have so many
They
responsibilities.
basically used this, I think, like in my opinion, it's kind of like using women just to increase the workforce.
yeah,
Just
keep
to
the
take advantage of the
yeah.
workforce, but like you still need to stay oppressed,
So it's
like
like
in the social setting. Like
you
the
have
social
to
line.
kind of keep working for the economy of the country, but at the same
Yeah.
time, you still have to make sure that you know
Yeah.
back home everything's like in order.
Yeah.
So that's like a lot of roles in one person.
Exactly. There was no work done in like increasing awareness about like how things should be at home. That
Yes.
men are also like responsible for that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's quite intense because it's like a lot of responsibility that is expected from a single
Yeah,
person.
gender expectation was still there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I feel like we still can't ignore the result. Maybe
Yeah.
that wasn't the intention of Communist Party
Yeah.
of the USSR, but the result was that definitely many women were introduced to the workforce, and that was great because we could see women of different professions,
Yes.
and they were all capable, and they were becoming like really empowered in a way that they knew that they can do whatever work
Yes.
there is, and also literacy rates increased a lot because in general
good,
Soviet Union had this policy of increasing literacy
Mm.
among both girls and boys, like women and men.
Yeah.
Even for adults who are illiterate, they would have like adult schools that you can go there after work, and it was both for women and men,
Yeah.
so they could learn literacy
That's actually
and
good.
improve their
Okay.
skills. Yeah, so that was also a good result.
I mean, in a way, that's how they actually make sure that everyone can get more equal opportunities, right?
And I actually wants
Yeah.
to tell a story of this one woman. It's like just one example, but I think it's reflective of how women were empowered and put on a pedestal as like heroes,
Yes.
but at the same time faced like a lot of difficulties in their lives. So there was this one woman, her name was Dariha, and she was from Kazakhstan. She was given this prize, like it was like the biggest achievement you can have as a socialist worker, as was Order of Lenin,
Okay.
and she was given it 3 times.
Wow.
She was working on this collective farm. She was collecting beets, and she was collecting the biggest amount of beets compared to anybody else. That's why she was given this like Order of Lenin 3 times, and she also became the hero of socialist labor.
Yes.
And like Stalin and Stalin was shaking her hand. So she was like a hero in her village, like everybody knew her. But her life was also very tragic because she lost her entire family, like during the World War II.
Okay.
She lost her husband, her children, and she adopted all the children in her village who lost their parents.
Oh my god.
So she's like a person with this great heart. But then she was like falsely denounced by somebody, and she lost all her prizes and all her status, and she actually was sent to the labor camp because of the rumors that like her husband was a captive in Nazi Germany.
Okay.
She was sent to the labor camp, and she like was there for 3 years until she was rehabilitated, and they realized that she was falsely accused.
Yes.
And then she went back for work, and she was working at the same farm till she got retired.
Oh.
And then now she stays the hero of socialist labor. Yeah, and I think it's like very representative how it was still very difficult for a woman, but yeah, there were opportunities where women could become heroes of the nation.
In a way, it's like you have all this like amazing, cool, powerful women, but at the same time, there's this expectation that is still on them. Like, you know, there's this like expectations that, okay, you have to be a good mother, you have to make sure your family is well fed, stuff like that. But at the same time, they have their own, you know, career. Yeah, that's a bit stressful. But how do you think it eventually, you know, coming back to modern time, let's say, how do you think all of that eventually bring you to like today? Like how do you think it changed, or what's the so-called like development?
So continuing the topic of the workforce, I think now women in the workplace are definitely like not as repressed as before.
Yes.
And there are many women of different professions. But there are still problems that women have to face in the workplace. First, a lot of employers still ask very embarrassing questions and very personal questions about whether a woman wants to have children, whether she will have to like get pregnant, have a pregnancy leave. And like you are not supposed to be asked these questions when you're looking for a job, like interviewing for a job. And this actually affects the decision making of the employer. So when you're a woman, it's more difficult for you to find the job. So this glass ceiling is definitely still there. And aside from that, a lot of women also face sexual harassment in the workplace. And based on the statistics, it really affects your career, because based on the worldwide statistics, not only Kazakhstan, but I'm pretty sure it's about the same in Kazakhstan too. If a woman faces sexual harassment in the first 2 years at a new workplace, she usually decides to quit the job and she's looking for a new job. So imagine you have to look for a new job after 2 years without any recommendation from a previous employer or whatever. It's really affecting your career, and it's none of your fault. So that's also a factor. And another factor in general, women, because it's so hard for them to find a job, and there are so many factors they need to consider, they also go for jobs that are less paid. And in Kazakhstan, most women can be found in areas that are less paid, like education or public healthcare or public catering. It sounds like this are big fields, but in general, you earn less in these fields. That's why it's mostly women who go there. Like most of the employees in this field are women. And if you go to education, then there are more, when you look at the universities, in general, in education, there are more women. But if you look at the management positions, they're all taken by men. And there are twice more men in management positions in the education field than women, like twice more.
Even though majority of them are women.
Yeah, overall in the field, there are 70% of women. But when you only look at the management positions, twice less women than men.
That's a big gap.
Yeah, so it kind of shows how women just can't go into these management positions.
Do you think it's mainly because, like you mentioned just now, right? A lot of time they were asked questions like, oh, are you planning to get married? Are you planning to have kids? So is it something that plays a big role to the gap that you see? Like people are limiting your opportunities, sort of.
It does. I think that because in Kazakhstan there's this general idea that everything that surrounds family planning is only like the woman's responsibility, and the one who's like the breadwinner or the person who gets money should be a man. And there's also like I don't know how relevant that is, but the effect of religion into this. Like the majority of people who live in Kazakhstan are Muslims, and so like Islam is the like one of the widespread religions in our country, and people think that because like they misinterpret some of the religious texts or anything, that woman has to be always like one step lower than the man, or she has to be like a neck and the man is a head or something like that. So these assumptions, they are not, there is like no reason or foundation behind them, and it feels like, okay, the woman should always be like one step lower than the men, and it's better if the director or the top management position goes to a man and then another one to a woman. And sadly, but a large fraction of population thinks that way, and yeah, there's this like cultural, traditional, religious effect on that.
Yeah, and that's kind of like contributes to this gap that you still see in modern times, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Is the gap like also common in like education, like in like let's say
in
university?
Yeah.
Universities.
So there was actually statistics showing that in a university, when you look at the women and men who are taking research position in universities, there were a lot more women, and it feels like, oh, that's great, we have like female researchers, but in Kazakhstan, having a research position doesn't mean that you actually have research output. It mostly means that you're a professor, and professors are very like underpaid
in Kazakhstan.
Yeah, and for like to be professor, you just like teach basically, and you don't really do research, and that's enough to like become like a research professional. So when you look at statistics, mostly it's women who go there because they are okay with the less with the lower pay.
Yes,
that's why it's mostly women there. And in academia in general, there is a big gap between the beginning of like your doctoral studies, like your beginning of PhD. Then after like first couple of years, a lot of women drop out because maybe they get pressured into marrying and like just societal pressure, or maybe they become pregnant and they can't keep up with the workload. Yeah, or maybe they were like sexually assaulted, which is also happens in institutions, and they drop out. A lot more than the amount of men who drop out during their first PhD years.
Oh, that's just crazy though. But like, so even if they're in like, let's say postgrad or master degree, etc., doesn't mean that they'll actually become scientists or researchers.
Yeah,
mainly because they end up in like teaching roles, which you mentioned earlier is actually underpaid.
Yeah, it is underpaid.
So it's like no matter how smart you are, there's still these like restrictions for you to actually get equal opportunities.
Yeah, even like if you just look at the pay gap, it's like around 35 or 34%.
Wow,
that's huge.
That's actually huge.
Yeah, across all fields, on average, it's like that.
30% at
like
least.
More than 30%. Yeah.
That's actually huge. So assuming that, oh yeah, I'm doing the math in my head. That's like
that's a lot.
And there's no like let's say laws or regulations to kind of like make it more equal, or
the question is often raised by many activists and even like international organizations, but Kazakhstan doesn't really like take measures to tackle it. Even statistics is vague. Like when I was trying to look up the statistics about different fields, it's just vague. It's hard to interpret. I feel like nobody really cares about it.
But I think like over time, even like back in the past and now, there's still a lot of like people, voicing out their opinions, a lot of activists,
for
right?
sure.
Like
there is actually like this really cool case. So another problem is aside from the wage gap, is actually domestic violence, and it's probably the biggest problem that women have to face in Kazakhstan, because domestic violence happens in a lot of households, and usually it's women and kids who are victims of it, and the majority of those who actually commit the assault are their relatives or their like partner, their husbands. And there was actually an artist, like a Kazakh artist. She was taking her diploma work and she dedicated her work to women's rights in Kazakhstan. And I think people can see now it's a little like video. Basically she tried to use like her art to voice these problems for women. I think we can take a look. So it's like a girl and she's holding a lot of cups. It's like traditional cup called kisya on her head. It's like stack of cups on her head, and the words around her head, they say in English it's like, mother, mother, how many cups were broken yesterday? And it's a tongue twister in Kazakh that she remembered from her childhood, and she used it in her art because it's kind of like she's comparing how fragile these cups are, and when like there is an argument, like you break a cup, it's like angry, like you break the like cups and fragile things, and how women are as fragile.
Mm.
But like she's asking her mom how many cups were broken. But maybe it's also kind of like how like they are the victims of the perpetrator in their family. Yeah.
So this is actually showcased like this art in Kazakhstan.
She has this website, and then she basically launched it on her Instagram.
Yeah.
And it was like huge, like people really liked it. And a lot of people also criticized it, that it's like very taboo, because she raised many taboo topics in her project.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's on her website, and like she has description of each topic under each video.
Like what is considered like taboo topics in Kazakhstan when it comes to like feminism or like women power?
Domestic violence a lot, as Nasta said, because I just want to bring up the statistics as well, and just comment a bit on this video, because it's very beautiful in the sense that you can see that as the video goes, her body is full of bruises, and like she like obviously someone beats her, and we know that approximately 400 women die per year because of the domestic violence, and that's more than one woman per day. So a woman goes and she's at home and she dies because of the domestic violence, and still that there is not much legislation and laws involved into this. So it's a big taboo topic, because we can see that it's widespread, and people don't discuss it because they think it's what stays at home should stay at home, something like that. But that's not the case if people are suffering and dying. So that's a taboo.
400 people per year.
400 women.
It got even worse after coronavirus. Coronavirus facilitated the whole thing, because they were trapped
Lockdown
with the man who assaults them in their house. So you can't really escape. And the biggest problem is that our law doesn't favor the woman in this position, because it's called like intentional slight bodily injury. So basically, if somebody beats you up intentionally, that's not like in the criminal law. So it won't be on your criminal record. You can't be put in the jail for this. Before that used to be you can pay a fine, which wasn't even that high, or stay in a police station for like 10 to 15 days, I think. Or you could pay a fine. Now, I think you can't pay anymore, but you have to stay for 10 to 15 days. But then what happens, like a man who assaults their like children and like wife, he stays there for 10 days, and he's released, and he's even more angry.
Yeah.
And they can't go anywhere. What if they don't have anywhere to hide from him? And maybe they depend economically on him. And then he comes back and he becomes even more angry.
Yeah.
And basically, they only can catch him and put him into prison after he commits a more serious crime. And often it's either lethal to a woman or a kid, or it's like almost lethal.
Oh my god. Yeah. And there's nothing on the law right now that protects the safety of women in this case.
No. The only cases where a man actually gets into prison is when it's almost lethal. And even in those cases, like activists have to fight for women. It's not as like it smoothly goes by the law. You actually have to fight for it. You have to post it on Instagram everywhere. So there is like social
raise awareness.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's like social media plays a big role as well to like protect them in a sense, because like the law itself is not really like protecting the women in this case. So there's like activists, or even like social media plays a big role. Yeah,
like we have this huge Instagram account, and it's an organization called ɪᴄᴇＧᴏ. ɪᴄᴇ means like don't be silent. And they protect women who come to them with their requests, and they also post all of the details and everything so that people can know that this happens in our country. Yeah. And it's like a team of lawyers, and they also travel to different cities. And it's just like one big organization, so everything is on them. Yeah. So they really do a great job, but it's also like a huge, exhausting job, because they're also being targeted by like officials and media. Yeah. Like they're doing great things, but at the same time, there's the pressure from people who might not be on the same page. Yeah, for sure. Do they normally provide like legal help, right, to like women? Yeah, they provide legal help. They also provide shelter. They do fundraising. Yeah, they do all of those things. Yeah, I mean, it's like the way they could actually help them, because the law itself is not really like there to protect them. But is there like, you mentioned activists, right? So besides, protection for victims, like what are some of like the activists that you see in Kazakhstan that really, shapes,
the women, empower and so.
Yeah, we also have like less dark activism.
Yes,
which is also sometimes gets sad, but
yeah, but it's inspiring to see
Yeah.
women in different fields.
we have
all
like
over.
a lot of feminist organizations. Like the first one was based in Almaty, and it's called Feminita. And it's run by like two wonderful activists who also protecting the rights of LGBTQ
Yes.
community and women. And they do different gatherings where they discuss these problems. Sometimes they celebrate certain dates for the LGBTQ community. They also like educate women, and they do research. Yeah, both of them are in humanities, so they actually like write papers, research papers. They gather statistics about the issues of women, like let's say trans women or lesbian women, because like nobody else is gonna do that job in Kazakhstan if not them.
Yes.
So they're doing a great job, and they actually have like some results done. Like very recently, we had a list of prohibited professions for women.
Wait, there.
Yeah.
What?
There was a
What's that?
list. Yeah, it was a list of professions that women could not have legally in the public sector. Yeah, and they were forcing like basically officials to kind of address the problem that's like doesn't make sense. And now this list is no longer there. just
Wait, so
because of
there
them.
were like a list of jobs that women cannot have legally.
Yeah.
It's not even like.
And they were ridiculous. Like there was this one case where they showed this woman. She was driving a truck of a certain type,
Yeah.
but it's just a truck.
And that's like not allowed.
And that was not allowed. And like this woman, she wanted to inspire other women. She posted a video on YouTube, and then her employer, like they saw this and they were like, "This is illegal. If somebody will find out, we'll be fined." So yeah, so they were like, "You cannot do that."
When is this?
But she was. It was
Very
recent,
recent.
yeah, like maybe last year.
No way.
Or 2 years ago, yeah. And she was basically illegally working there. Like on contract, it was a different position, but she was doing that kind of work because she liked it. And then this organization kind of showed her story to show how ridiculous this list is. Yeah, and then they actually helped her to find the same position in a private company where it's allowed.
But what kind of jobs are
Yeah, like
not allowed?
driving some types of vehicles.
Okay.
And it's like very arbitrary. Like women can't drive.
Yeah, so so there's types of trucks that women cannot drive.
Yeah.
Legally.
Yeah.
Like people can fine you if
And
you
some
caught.
and some like jobs that like put you in danger because like
Yeah.
you're a woman, you have to give birth.
Health, like
Well, like
put your health on
Like
I
your health
think-
is like more valuable than a man's health.
Oh,
So it's like it should be good for you, but at the
don't
same
know how to feel
time,
about that.
yeah, like it still limits women's like opportunities to find a job.
So in a way, it's like it doesn't matter if you can actually do the job, but legally you cannot
Yeah,
do the job.
yeah,
And it's like it's no longer happening, but
yeah.
it was
It's
only
a recent achievement
Yeah,
that we
very
don't
recent.
have that list anymore, and now women can do whatever they want to do and take any employment that
it's
they
really
want to.
recent than last year. It only like abolished
Maybe like two. Like yeah, it happened this year, I think.
Yeah,
Like
Oh.
very recent. Yeah, yeah.
2021.
But they were
That's-
fighting for this for like the longest time.
That's crazy. When you said like there's a list, I thought like it was like I don't know 10 years ago, a few decades ago.
Yeah, it was very recent. Like other countries still have it. Like I think Russia still has it. I'm not sure,
Oh.
but like it's not just Kazakhstan who had this list.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's crazy though. Yes. So like besides that, like how do you think the activists are using, let's say, social media or like maybe social trends to actually promote the idea of like feminism?
I think like in general, we like in the last maybe 5 years there were more and more feminist organizations
Yes.
happening. In general, there are also women coming from other activist organizations because we have like big political movements that are pro-democracy
Yeah.
and pro-free speech.
Mm.
And it was like also very recent, maybe in the last 2-3 years, and women like have a big role in that as well.
Okay. So in a way, like, is it something that, let's say you have a big social movement like you mentioned just now, right? Is it something that legally it's okay for you to like host like these movements, or is it something that is still not looked in a positive way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
think like when we talk about this like actions or something like the march or the protest in a way, people still like, we do have some large ones. For example, the 8th of March, we do have like a big gathering and it's allowed. But for some other gatherings, like women or whoever the organizer is, they have to kind of seek for an approval, and it's not really like widespread that you can see. It's just once a year we do have this like large gathering, but most of the time we still use the social media as the biggest platform to communicate about like what's happening, about like issues nowadays, the sexual harassment, for example, or even like for the initiatives that are led by women. You can see a lot of them on social media, and that's like the platform where everyone supports, shares, and learns about them.
So in a way, they're used like the one just now, right, to protect victims of domestic violence. They actually use social media to protect them. Which is, I think that's like really great.
And maybe like even if it goes even further, like women create a lot of content, like fresh content. Like for example, there's this one woman, Aisana. She basically founded 3 independent media portals, like 3, and they're all like targeting different audiences, but they're independent from our government, and it's just like great. Like one is The Village. It's like a newspaper, news portal. It's like very general on general topics. Another one is mostly for women, about women's rights, and another one just about human rights in Kazakhstan, and it's all founded by her.
That's so
and she's like very active in pro-democracy and pro-free speech movement as well. So she's like doing a lot of work.
And all of this is like connected, through social media in a way.
I think it probably has the biggest impact on the society and social awareness for sure, because everybody's using social media now.
What are some of the bigger topics when it comes to feminism in Kazakhstan? Like, what are some things that people talk about and people think that we need to raise awareness?
I think recently there are several topics that are very popular. Like we definitely see more content about female health. Like there is one portal that I found and it's really cool. It's called Umay Cup. And Umay is like the name of a goddess. It was like it's like a goddess of fertility. She's like the main goddess. And it's like cups, like from menstrual cup, and they talk about female health and menstruation, and their goal is to normalize talking about menstruation, and I think that's great because it's definitely a taboo in Kazakh culture.
It is in many cultures, right? Like people tend to like not talk about it, and like it's something you have to talk about privately with only women and stuff. But it's good, like, so there are people who's trying to like bring awareness.
For sure. It's one of the topics that's like more popular now.
So like it's usually used in social media to like raise awareness, right?
And also educate. And there is also a lot of art happening where people talk, like women try to express
the body image you're talking about. Because recently there've been a lot of artworks that they address the woman body. It was a taboo topic as well, because like to be naked, to show your body, or like overall not covering your body was like a taboo and shameful. But now we have it
like women are basically denied sexuality, and like the fact that they are sexual beings is like a taboo. And this artist, her Instagram is Kantars, and she's like her drawings are really beautiful. And she draws like naked women wearing like traditional jewelry, dresses, some clothes, like ornaments, and like a lot of haters who are like very conservative, like conservative bloggers, they attack her all the time, and just like basically shaming her for just like doing her art. And that's huge. Like it was a huge response from social media from both sides, like people who love it, people who hate it.
I mean it's like kind of started a like cyber war against two sides pretty much. But in a way, like people are actually more and more open. They talk about things that are considered taboo in the society.
It's definitely happening.
So in a way it's going to the direction that both of you think it's good. Like
hopefully there's hope.
There is like
like a lot of hope.
There are people who's like doing something. I think like before we actually end, it'll be interesting to hear from like you guys, especially just now you mentioned that you're part of something when you're in high school, right? Like what is it that you did before?
So me and my friends were organizing feminist events in my high school. It was actually the first feminist club in my high school, and we were just having like our meetings where we would talk about feminist readings and feminist theory, but we were also having this huge event where we were talking about sexual harassment, and we gathered, I think it was interesting, we gathered stories from our friends and friends of our friends
Yeah.
about how they were sexually harassed.
Yeah.
And we would like enact that on stage as like a
Oh.
little play.
Like a play, yeah.
Yeah, to make the audience really feel how it feels when you get harassed.
Ah.
Yeah, and that was like one of the biggest events that we had.
Oh, so that was in high school, right?
Yeah, and actually got like attention from like a lot of directors and principals and like people who fund our school because it's like public fund.
Yeah.
And they all came to watch and they really liked it.
Oh,
and
that's
we were really
good.
scared because that was the first time the word sex was ever used in an event in our school.
Yeah.
And we were like scary. Like, it was so scary.
No, what will happen?
Yeah, and we actually used the word like sexual harassment. And we were
Yeah.
like, can we say that?
It's like I mean, back then you must be only like what 16, no 17.
We were like 17, 18, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be like, oh, I need to graduate high school. Like,
Yeah.
that's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
No, but in a way that it's good to see that so many people really want to make a change. You know, like oftentimes like people talk about it, but you know nothing is pretty much done.
Mhm.
But we see here, you know, in Kazakhstan, there's so many like activists. There's so many people who wants to make changes. So like for both of you, like, do you think there's something that you wish you see more in Kazakhstan, or something that you know kind of your hopes for you know feminism or like for women in Kazakhstan in general? Yeah. There's
I
something.
very much love the like what's happening right now in the STEM industry
Yeah.
and like the healthcare and in general women in tech. That is something I think our country's doing great
Yeah.
in. So we
Yeah.
both I think we had mentors from one of the leading university in our country
In
and
biology field.
Yeah, in biology field because we
Ah.
are very close
Yeah.
in like our fields. So our mentors were like women and they gave a lot of empowerment back then and they opened up the world of opportunities and I was able to see like for example, okay, this is what we can do and we're
Yeah.
actually not limited in where we can
Yeah.
go. So it gives a lot of hope and inspiration.
Yeah.
And touching on the how women and coronavirus worked, like in Kazakhstan, it was like a huge phenomenon. So there was this organization founded by two women, one scientist and one lawyer, and both really wonderful, really smart. They made this volunteering organization, and I was also volunteering. Were you?
No, but I was supporting.
Yeah. I was also
Yeah.
volunteering for them. We were translating research papers from English to Russian and to Kazakh for our professionals, and also creating available media content for people who are not really sciencey, so they can understand what are the measures, how we prevent coronavirus spread and everything. And now they do it not only about coronavirus, but about diseases and medicine in general, because there are many misconceptions in our like healthcare, and there are a lot of female scientists and doctors who are part of the organization, and they actually got into the list of Forbes 30 under 30. Yeah.
That's so cool. I think in a way today what I see is you guys have so many cool people. Like not just in the past but even now. Like
Yeah.
these are topics that are so sensitive and it's not easy for people to be like, you know what, let's go out and talk about this. You know, it's just not easy, especially when you came from like you feel like the history really shaped a certain mindset. I mean, it's not easy to change. So it's pretty cool that, you know, we're seeing things, you know, change over time.
Yeah.
So hopefully you guys had a great time talking to us.
Yeah.
Thank you for
was
sure.
really
Yeah,
nice.
like at least for me, I feel like I learned a lot. And it's also a good way for not just myself, but maybe the audience to think like, what are some of the things that we can actually do? You know, like, you know, we don't have to do like amazing things or big things, but baby steps or like supporting or even like just a minor role would be great. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, big things doesn't happen overnight. So it's good that, you know, you guys have started something and it's going in a great direction. So hopefully our audience also had a great time listening, tuning in tonight. So remember to click like, subscribe, or
Oh, we have questions.
we have questions. Oh, okay. Is it common for Kazakhstan women to marry in their early 20s? And are women allowed to serve in the military?
Women do serve in military, a lot of them.
Oh,
Yeah.
We do have like the fraction of women who serve.
It's not like prohibited.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
in the list.
Oh,
Yeah.
how about the first question?
I think it depends. We don't have the official statistics, right?
Yeah.
But judging from like my personal experience, I can see that a lot of women. It's in our culture, it's like, you have to marry at around 23 to 25, and if it's later, people will start bothering you with questions like, when are you going to start a family?
They will pressure like, we need grandchildren.
Yeah, that's like 25 is like, okay, after this, every birthday, every social gathering with your family will gonna be like, okay, where's your family?
Yeah.
Like, where are your kids?
Like family dinners like become tense.
And it's like you're 24 and they're like, where's your kids?
Yeah.
Is that still common here? Like the kind of expectations, right?
It is a bit common.
Also, women who give birth for the first time in older age are judged a lot. Like in the hospitals and by the people, by doctors even.
By the doctors.
Yeah, they will judge you like, oh, you're suffering. Like, because it's hard to give birth when you're older.
Yeah.
But they're just like, you brought it on yourself kind of attitude. Not always, but like, it does happen.
It does happen.
Yeah.
It's like you just went through like hours and hours of labor, and the first thing you hear is like, see?
Yeah.
You could have gave birth earlier.
Yeah. They even have this word like stara
Yeah, exactly.
And it sounds so
like
scary.
old woman giving birth. You know, this is the word, one word, old woman giving birth is like, this is a word for you
it's
in
like,
the clinic to call you.
Yeah, it's like a claim.
That's a word.
Yeah, they just like put this label on you, stararadeshe. It's
after
like a woman.
35, is it? Or after 40?
Yeah, whatever. It's like arbitrary. Like if you're old, like older than supposed to be, and you're giving birth for the first time, it's like stararadeshe.
Yeah, it's very.
So there's
very
a word
weird.
for that.
Yeah.
That's so specific.
It's like a label.
Oh, wow, that's like, okay, very specific, very sad, but okay, let's hope that's something that would also change over time.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think like it's good progress. Like any progress is good progress. So really looking forward to more great things. Like definitely gonna follow some of the social media that was mentioned today. It's pretty
Yes,
cool.
please follow.
Yes,
all
yes.
of that.
Any other words from both of you before we end?
I'm just glad that there were people interested in how women are in Kazakhstan, and I think it's just like good to know that like overall we are getting closer to gender equality, and definitely growing up in this era was not bad, because like I personally had so many female heroes in my life that inspired me a lot, and I think that means a lot.
Yeah, and it's a wonderful opportunity to talk about that and share about that, because I believe the pathway that Kazakhstan has had is very similar to many cultures. So if you can also project this to your own culture, to your own history, and start with building your own awareness, that is already like a big contribution to like the whole feminism movement.
I mean, like you guys have such like cool like female figures, but both of you are really cool as well. So looking forward to what more great things. And so for our audience, thank you so much for actually tuning in, listening in. So hope you guys also learned a lot from like both of them today. Again, don't forget to share, subscribe to the channel, leave some comments if you have any questions, and really hope that you guys had a great evening. So yeah, bye everyone.
Bye.